Islam is one of the world's largest religions and has over 1 billion followers spread across every continent. Its teachings, practices and cultural influence touch many aspects of daily life, not only in predominantly Muslim countries, but also in communities around the globe. But the early days of Islam were difficult, as the first believers in the new faith faced resistance from those in power in the city of Mecca. Muhammad was born in Mecca around 570 CE and lived during a time when Arabia remained divided by tribal loyalty and lacked a central government. He grew up among people who maintained a mix of tribal customs and polytheistic religious beliefs, and his early experiences within this divided society influenced the course of his later mission. Nevertheless, some monotheistic beliefs, including Christianity and Judaism, were also present in the region, particularly in the north and along trade routes. Among these religious movements were individuals known as Hanifs, who were pre-Islamic monotheists who rejected idol worship and tried to follow the faith of Abraham without forming a separate group. Muhammad specifically belonged to the Banu Hashim, a respected sub-clan of the powerful Quraysh tribe, which controlled both the Kaaba and the profitable caravan trade that passed through Mecca. His father, Abdullah, had died before Muhammad's birth, and his mother, Amina, had passed away when he was 6. His grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, then took custody of the boy, but after his death 2 years later, the responsibility passed to Abu Talib, Muhammad's uncle, who protected and raised him within the close-knit world of Quraysh family alliances. By the 6th century CE, Mecca had already become a centre of both commerce and religious pilgrimage. In the centre of Mecca was the Kaaba, a cube-shaped sanctuary which housed idols of various tribal gods and provided a shared holy place for competing clans. Control over pilgrimage rights to Kaaba provided the Quraysh elite with influence and income, which they protected through agreements with neighbouring tribes and management of trading routes between southern Arabia and the Levant. Although trade brought wealth to the city, many residents lived in hardship, and social divisions created tensions that the ruling families refused to address. Muhammad earned a reputation for trustworthiness and sound judgment while working as a merchant in his youth. While he was managing trade caravans, he came into the employment of Khadija bint Khuwaylid, a successful and wealthy widow 15 years his senior. Known as Al-Tahira, or the Pure One, she held high status with the Mecca elite. Impressed by his conduct, she proposed marriage. He accepted, and their union around 595 CE provided him with financial stability and increased his social standing within the city's merchant upper class. Muhammad remained married to Khadija until her death in 619, taking no other wives during her lifetime. By the age of 40, while he was still married, he had begun retreating to a cave on Mount Hira for long periods to pray and reflect about the injustice and spiritual confusion that troubled Meccan society. According to Islamic tradition, in the year 610, during one of these solitary retreats, Muhammad experienced an appearance of the angel Jibril, who commanded him to recite words of divine origin. Startled and frightened, he sought reassurance from Khadija, who encouraged him and took him to her cousin Waraka ibn Nawfal, a Christian who affirmed that the experience resembled those of earlier prophets. Over the next 2 decades, Muhammad continued to receive revelations, which his followers memorized and wrote down. These verses, later compiled into the Qur'an, declared the absolute oneness of God and demanded moral reform that required charity and held individuals accountable on the Day of Judgment. A widely accepted standard version of the Qur'an was compiled under the direction of Caliph Uthman ibn Affan in the mid-7th century to preserve a standardized text across the growing Muslim world. When Muhammad began preaching publicly around 613, he challenged the polytheism that underpinned Mecca's religious traditions and condemned the corruption of its elites. His message gained followers, especially among those without protection from strong clans, but it provoked growing hostility from the Quraysh leaders, who feared that his influence would undermine the city's authority and jeopardize its economy. They subjected his followers to harassment that took the form of social isolation and physical violence. Some converts, including former slaves, endured torture while others sought refuge in Abyssinia under the protection of the Negus, a Christian ruler of the kingdom of Aksum, who refused to hand them over. Abu Talib continued to shelter Muhammad, but the Quraysh increased pressure on his clan and imposed economic boycotts that caused hardship. In 622, after a plot to assassinate him had become known, Muhammad and his followers fled Mecca and travelled to Yathrib, later called Medina. This event, known as the Hijra, became the starting point of the Islamic calendar. Tribal leaders in Yathrib, especially from the Aws and Khazraj clans, had invited Muhammad to mediate long-standing disputes. Once he arrived, he established a new community bound through shared faith, rather than by tribal ties. He drafted a document known as the Constitution of Medina, which defined the Muslim Ummah and set out agreements between the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants. He also built a mosque that operated as both a place of worship and a political centre. From this base, he led his followers in military and diplomatic missions and introduced legal and religious rulings based on new revelations. Clashes with the Meccans continued in the following years. In 624, the Muslims defeated a better-equipped Quraysh force at the Battle of Badr, an event seen by Muhammad's followers as a sign of divine favour. In 625, they suffered losses at the Battle of Uhud, and in 627 they withstood a siege during the Battle of the Trench. Each event strengthened the discipline of the Muslim community and increased Muhammad's authority as both a spiritual and military leader. Over time, Muhammad expanded his influence through treaties with Arab tribes, and he presented Islam as a unifying message that connected people across family ties. In 628, Muhammad signed the Treaty of Hudaybiyah with the Quraysh, which allowed his followers to undertake pilgrimage the following year. Though some of his companions viewed the agreement as a concession, it helped secure peace and permitted wider outreach. In 630, after the Quraysh violated the treaty, Muhammad led a large force of about 10,000 followers to Mecca. The city surrendered, and he entered peacefully. He ordered the destruction of idols at the Kaaba, and he rededicated it to the worship of one God. He pardoned many of his former enemies and oversaw the integration of the Quraysh into the expanding Muslim community. In the final 2 years of his life, Muhammad continued to send letters to rulers outside Arabia, including the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius, the Sasanian ruler, the chief of the Ghassanids, and the governor of Egypt, Muqawqis. He invited these rulers to accept Islam. During his farewell pilgrimage in 632, he addressed a large crowd at Arafat, where he summarized the key principles of the faith and urged unity among his followers. He emphasized that life and property should be protected, that charging interest must stop, and that all believers were equal before God. Not long after his return to Medina, he fell ill and died. His death was considered to be the end of direct revelation, but the community he established had already expanded across much of Western Arabia. The central religious text of the Muslim religion is called the Qur'an. In Arabic, this word means recitation. The Qur'an is the collection of the sermons given by Muhammad during his lifetime and records the central beliefs of Islam. For Muslims, this book is considered to be the literal word of God as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. In order to record them faithfully, the revelations were memorized and written down by the Prophet's companions during his lifetime. Then, after his death, these writings were gradually compiled into a single book by the Caliph Abu Bakr, which was later standardized by the third Caliph, Uthman ibn Affan, which was to be used across the Muslim world. The text of the Quran covers a wide range of subjects, including theology, law, social justice, family relations, and personal ethics. It emphasizes the oneness of God, or Tawhid, a defense of Muhammad's prophethood, the nature of the afterlife, and reasons why humans are accountable to Allah for their actions in life. The Quran also provides guidelines for worship, business transactions, marriage, and other aspects of daily life. For non-Muslims, the message of the verses are initially hard to understand, as they are often presented allegorically and require interpretation. As a result, rich tradition of exegesis developed over time to help explain the various meanings in the Quran. To the Muslim community, the Quran is the primary source of Islamic law, known as Sharia, as it provides the fundamental principles that guide legal reasoning and decision-making. Alongside the Hadith, it forms the basis for fiqh, the human understanding of the divine law. The Hadith is a collection of reports describing the sayings, actions, and approvals of Prophet Muhammad. These reports provide context and explanation for the Quran's verses, and often offer practical examples of how to live according to Islamic principles. The Hadith has been meticulously collected and classified by scholars, who evaluated the reliability of the narrators and the authenticity of the content. The most respected collections include those by Bukhari, Muslim, and others. As a result, Islamic scholars have developed various legal schools, or madhahib, that interpret the Qur'an and Hadith to address new situations and challenges followers face during their lives. While the two texts are different books, the Qur'an and Hadith are considered to complement each other. The Hadith provides context, elaboration, and practical application for the Qur'anic teachings. The interpretation of these texts has led to a rich intellectual tradition, with scholars engaging in debate, reasoning, and consensus to understand and apply the teachings in various cultural and historical contexts. Following the death of Prophet Muhammad in 632, the Islamic community embarked on a series of military and political expansions under the leadership of the rightly guided caliphs. Muhammad's close companion Abu Bakr became the first of these caliphs. He led the Muslim community and was the one that first initiated the collection of the Qur'an's revelations into a single book. Within a few decades, Muslim armies had conquered vast territories, including the Persian Sasanian Empire and parts of the Byzantine Empire. These early conquests were driven by a combination of religious zeal, economic incentives, and political ambitions. However, the spread of Islam was not just a military phenomenon. It also involved significant cultural exchange between the conquerors and the people they controlled. As Islam reached new regions, it interacted with local traditions, which led to a fusion of cultures. Islamic scholars made an effort to preserve and expand upon Greek, Roman, and Indian knowledge, as well as contributing their own thoughts to fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Trade also played a vital role in the spread of Islam, particularly in regions like Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Indian subcontinent. Muslim merchants, traders, and travelers established commercial networks that facilitated not only the exchange of goods, but also ideas, technologies, and religious beliefs. Along with the traders went the missionaries, or Sufis, and scholars who helped spread the teachings of Islam in these regions. Cities like Timbuktu, Samarkand, and Malacca soon became centers of both trade and Islamic learning. In many regions, Islam was adopted by local rulers and elites who then influenced their broader societies to accept the new religion. Individual conversion of people into Islam was rarely forced. Instead, it often occurred through interaction, intermarriage, economic incentives, and the appeal of Islamic social and legal principles. As Islam spread to diverse cultural and geographical settings, it adapted to local conditions, leading to the development of regional variations. I hope that you have enjoyed learning about the history of the birth of Islam. If you would like to know more, be sure to check out the free resources on the History Skills website. I look forward to seeing you on our next video.